go ahead, tell us what you thought, what you saw, what was exciting, and then tell me how I'm right about, producing good quality multiple shades of white.
Matt, you are so right. You're so right. There, Mitch, you can edit that out.
Nope, keep it. Print it. That's the show. Matt's so right. That's the title, actually.
Never before have I been so offended by something I 100% agree with.
On this episode of ResiWeek, Blu-rays kind of deadish, Lightapalooza and WiSA at CES. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek. This is ResiWeek, episode 468. Matt's so right. Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matty Scott for AVNation.tv, and this week we are pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Katie McGregor-Bennett. She's the president of KMB Communications. How you doing, Katie?
Doing well. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you for being here. Then we have Mr. Patrick Norton. He's a content specialist over at CTI. How you doing, Patrick?
I am full of mirth and good cheer.
Mirth, I love it. All right, to not take away the good cheer, but we're going to have a moment of silence just before we jump into the stories, because on Friday it was announced that Sony is halting production of recordable Blu-rays, mini discs, which I didn't realize they still made, and mini DV cassettes. They're gone, folks. So go find a retailer and stock up, I guess, on your mini DVs that you needed.
I have feels about this.
I do too.
Share your feels.
Well, let's. The thing that gave this story a huge amount of traction is What Hi-Fi, which is a British hi-fi enthusiast magazine. I affectionately think of it as the place to go if you're a British manufacturer and you want to get 5 stars, no matter what you produce. They're solid that way, but they published on social media and elsewhere, Sony announces that it will officially end production of Blu-ray discs, and every home theater nerd on the surface of the planet was like, no! And they clicked on the article, and about 3 lines in they realized it was Sony is stopping production of something that nobody's used for years except for the people who still have alternates from their professional division and elsewhere. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the nastiest, like, most people posting stories know at this point that this level of clickbait is bad for people ever clicking on a story from your publication again, or your website, or whatever you want to call it. But somebody's going to be learning a darling little lesson over What Hi-Fi this week as click-throughs drop through the floor. Not that click-throughs make up much of traffic, but I was really pissed off about this article.
And see, I just wanted to shed a tear for it, pour a little out, but I'm glad we could start it off with such excitement. Now, what I'm curious about is I'm assuming that this is for it's Sony, and as someone who has manufactured quite a few Blu-ray discs in my time, we never used Sony. We used Teo Uden and a bunch of other manufacturers, never Sony. But I don't think it means that they're going to stop producing movies on Blu-ray at all. It's just consumer. I'm assuming just consumer sales of those products of recordable media. And where would you go buy recorded media if you were a consumer? I have no clue.
Well, let me put this into perspective, right?
Sure.
Like, nobody really thinks about, CDR recordables. Nobody really thinks about mini disc data, except for the people who still use it. In Japan, that's probably a higher number of people than anywhere else on the planet, right?
Yeah.
But and of course, when you look at What Hi-Fi's article, they had a big array of Blu-ray discs and a big picture across the top of it. It's most of these things have been replaced. But I mean, we're in an age where bands are releasing cassette releases, they're doing multiple vinyl releases. There's still as weird as it sounds, there's still a huge community that, mostly again in Japan, that listens to and creates, mini discs.
Yeah.
And there's still, I would be curious how many people are actually still using mini DV video cameras, but, I'm not surprised all this is going away. Well,
I have one left in the shop. It still works.
What's the last time you actually used it for a project?
But a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, we pulled it out to archive some stuff. But again, it's a lost time. It's fine. We'll be okay. All right, let's scrap that topic for a second. We're going to start off the show officially with a story that comes to us from CE Pro, Lightapalooza. This is a day 3 recap and thoughts from Nick Bover, who was at the show. Katie was also at the show, so we're going to pick her brain for a second. Go read through the article as well as the day 2 and day 1 recaps. They cover some, just a good overview of what was at the show, what you could see, etc. Katie, I want to come to you as we start off on this. First of all, kind of tell us what you saw, what was exciting, and then something that Nick mentioned, I think when he was talking about WAC, was almost disappointed that they were showing mostly white lights opposed to colored lights. And I would argue, I want the majority of these manufacturers to focus on white lights because those are the lights that we sell really, really well and easily. And we got to stop turning homes into discos. But go ahead, tell us what you thought, what you saw, what was exciting, and then tell me how I'm right about, producing good quality, multiple shades of white.
Matt, you are so right. You're so right. There, Mitch, you can edit that out.
Nope, keep it. Print it. That's the show. Matt's so right. That's the title, actually.
No, Lightapalooza. So it was a great event. It's built upon the last couple of years. This is my 3rd year, so I've only been attending since they had opened it up. This year, they had an expanded show floor. They had a power and energy management. They called it Power Alley. They also had system design there, so Blackwire Designs was there, D-Tools was there, and then sort of accessory lines as well that cater to the lighting category. So WallSmart was there with their concealment solutions, CLS was there, et cetera, et cetera. So more than in the last few years where it's just been lighting brands, primarily lighting brands that were there this year. Now you saw an expansion of that, which I always appreciate because it provides more of an opportunity to learn more about the industry at large when you go to these events. But because this show is so focused on lighting, it makes a lot of sense, obviously, to put the emphasis on lighting brands, but then also how do you find success in the category? And so, success in the category from accessories and other related products and services, but the education, I think, really is what shines at this event. The CE Pro article and Nick's coverage emphasizes very much the brands that were on the show floor and what they were showing and sort of, what their showcase was. But I think the event from an education perspective is really quite exceptional. That starts on Monday and it goes all the way through Thursday. The show floor opened at 2:00 on Tuesday, and it was packed Wednesday all day, and then a few hours on Thursday as well. So you can sort of anticipate what the wave is going to be in terms of attendance. Most people came in on Monday night, went to the networking event, and then hit the ground running on Tuesday. Buying groups had their meetings for the first part of the day, and then at that point the show floor opened, and it was like a flood at the show floor. It was cool to see because there was very much an interest in what was there from the integration community. This event happening earlier in the year, it gives you a jump start on what's coming to market and what you'll see as the year unfolds. So for those that have a little bit more of a competitive orientation or really want to get a jump on projects, make sure that what they're speccing is not only available, but is on par with what else might else be coming to market or already there. So I think, for those who are already in the lighting category or looking to get into it, this event should absolutely be on your radar. I suspect it'll be even bigger next year, as it always is. There's always a curiosity is, are they going to open it up to other categories? And that, obviously the only one that can speak to that is Tom Doherty. And you guys should consider having Tom come on. I say that because before the show opened, we had an opportunity to chat with him. I'd forgotten Tom's history in the industry. Yeah, and he was one of the guys that, created CEDIA Expo. So as he went on to lovingly say, this 30 years ago, the show was held, CEDIA Expo was held at the same property. And so there was a lot of sort of homage being paid to the
some hinting
growth
there.
of the industry.
Yeah,
some hinting there. Yeah. But Daryl Friedman came in and he sat down with Tom, and they had a really compelling conversation about how the event was started, CEDIA Expo back in the day, and how it's evolved, and then what Lightapalooza is doing. So that's kind of the background on it. Yes, Patrick, you have a question?
So was it? I mean, at this point, no. Well, I raised my hand. It's a thing for people who are not watching the
very
video,
polite of you,
wondering what's
sir.
going on. But it's so is lighting becoming that much? Is this becoming like a huge part? Of residential? Is it a side sell for residential? Is it an emerging market in residential? Because it's
Yes.
interesting that it's it's a fairly focused trade show as it is right now, even with the power stuff being added in there, or it feels that way to me from far on the outside.
Yeah, from where I sit, the answer is yes to all of those, because it really depends on the integration community varies dramatically. From the sole proprietors to those with it tends
More
many
resources.
employees, more resources. There we go. That's the right way to put it.
It's been the big talking point for the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Is that this is the new vertical that integrators can get into.
It's fraught with concern or challenge, right?
Yeah. Well, so yes and no. How? All right. So now we're gonna have a whole show about lighting.
No, no,
It's fine.
Don't
I love
dive
it.
too deep.
No, I will dive as deep as I stinking want. Mitchell will edit it. It's fine. The lighting opportunity is massive because, again, it's in every single home and it's in every single room, whereas everything else that we do other than maybe Wi-Fi does not cover the entire breadth of the home.
Sure.
Where lighting gets complicated, and this is kind of one of the questions I had for you, Patrick, was lighting is and can be as simple or as complicated as you want it to be. If you talk to an actual lighting designer, they will allude as such that we can get as particular as you want as far as how we're going to light up a space. It can be as simple as that, builder grade special of a single, 2-bulb fixture in the middle of the room to a couple of pot lights set out as a landing zone, as the electricians love to do, to multiple layers of light and design focused applications. That is kind of where we live. What I'm curious about, because when I read through the coverage from Lightapalooza and literally the coverage of any lighting release anywhere, we as an industry, in my opinion, are missing out on the art that lighting allows us to create, which is the way we, again, in my opinion, you can tell me I'm wrong and I'll debate you, but that's where we should live. We should live on the art side, because the technical side, as much as we understand it, our customers don't care. And when you read through the coverage from most of these shows, I have seen more in-depth conversation about heat sinks on an LED fixture that, well, I love to learn more about heat sinks, and it is important. I've sold lighting for over 20 years in both stage and residential and now commercial. I have never once had a heat sink conversation with a customer. Yet the industry focuses really heavily on the technical aspects, just like we do in, TVs, where you can ask most integrators to break down how 4K transmission works, and they will happily tell you, whereas the customer just wants to know that when they watch, NFL.
Insert name of show here.
Yeah, insert anything that it's going to look good. Are we overly complicating and technalizing the lighting world?
I mean, isn't that kind of one of the core problems with both commercial and residential integration, where, your consultant comes in, they're like, we're going to talk to you about how heat sinks are going to change everything. Now, third generation heat sink technology available on LEDs is really taking light capacity and output, and actually the distribution of the light across the interior glass to levels that have been unprecedented. We're talking a 7-8% change here. You know what I mean? Like I always laugh because worked at magazines for a while. I ran a lab for a while, and there was this one process where somebody would be like, it's 4% faster, and it's like, okay, 3% is the margin of meaninglessness in our benchmarks, And I want you to, I'm gonna take you out of the room. I'm going to put this graphics card into one of these machines. You're going to play these 3 machines. You're going to tell me which one you actually notice. And they'd be like, I can't tell. I'm like, so the $1,000 upgrade, you can't tell. And then there'd be this like moment, like you'd watch the, and I don't feel like once we got to LEDs, because I hate CFL technology with a fiery passion of 1,000 suns. And once we got to LEDs, once we get to like a CRI of 90 plus, and we explain, color temperatures, do you want to look like you're in a, beautiful 19th century setting, or do you want to look like you're in the harsh white light of a prison? And that usually takes like one moment. And then it's like, do you want the disco installation? And it's like, where does the conversation go from there? So do people go super technical because they want to wow people or baffle people with their technological sophistication? I mean,
I don't know. I've just, in my experience, I've noticed that when I'm pitching against an electrician, for example, and we pitch a job in the late fall that I'm thinking of specifically, really nice outdoor project. We're doing landscape lighting throughout. We're doing a bunch of really cool accent stuff. So we get into the pavilion area where we're doing entertainment, and there's going to be some dining and all the jazz. And we're talking pot lights. And I'm not one to overly technical, make it a tech conversation. We're having what's the feel you want to have in this space? And we got through this whole thing, and the client asked a couple of technical questions, which we answered. And then they went, okay, but how much are these? Like, well, they're a couple $100 a fixture. Like, okay, well, our electrician has these, and they're $50. I'm like, okay, but they don't dim, and they're a CRI of 80, so that means they're probably a CRI of 65. Yeah, it's not going to look.
Reds are going to look green. Your greens are going to look orange.
Amazing. And the client looked at their budget and went, okay, yeah, I don't really care. We're just going to go with these. And I think that's when I look at what some of the manufacturers are doing, and I love the idea of swappable bezels and changing the aperture level and the lenses. And we've sold a lot of fixtures that do that. I've sold a lot of speakers that have round grills and square grills, depending on what you want. No one's come back and ever said, you know what, we're changing the look of this room, and I need square grills now for all of my fixtures and my speakers. I'm concerned that because we're a technical industry, we're missing the boat. Katie, am I wrong on this? And you already said I was right, and so right that I feel like that's kind of how you have to answer.
You're not wrong. How's that?
Practically a ringing endorsement.
What you say is true, and there is an inclination for our industry to, whether it happens by default or by intent, to complicate things. I think going back to the core of what the question was, and speaking specifically about Lightapalooza, I think that's the beauty of this event personally, because there is such an emphasis made on education, and not down to round or square, but there is a strong drumbeat about cautionary tales of what you need to know and the level of expertise that you need to have to succeed, and also the role that the integrator can play, should play, might play. And obviously the answer to that varies greatly by the firm. And so, I think having an event that really focuses on a category that is going to be impactful to the channel for the foreseeable future, making sure that the understanding, broad-based understanding by the community of where the challenges lie, the roles of all of the other players in the room that have already existed historically, and the opportunity for integrators, not necessarily being the only person in the room talking about lighting, but being an accessory to that conversation. And if you hold the keys to the house and you have everything that goes in it, great. Here are the things that you need to know, and here's some of the opportunities and resources available to you. If you don't, and you're still very specialized, here's your path for that. So I think from an event perspective, what it is intending to do and what it is setting out to do is exactly what the industry needs to make sure that the baseline knowledge is there, and not from within our industry. And I think that's the thing that we tend to gravitate towards. Of we know everything, we're the experts, we're going to teach each other what we know, and we're going to wow each other with the language. This event, it has some of that, but it also is too, from a lighting expert standpoint, here's what our industry needs to know in order to harness the opportunity. So, I think that, and if we had that originally in networking, it might have not been as slow a roll to success of that trajectory. But we tried to do it ourselves internally. And so, I do think that this is, it's a good opportunity for, to level set the knowledge base. Is it the answer to all things? No. Is it going to make a lighting expert, a lighting designer out of all of us? No, but that's not its intent either.
Yeah, they did a great job when Tom initially started getting into this with, I believe, HTSA, and partnering with the ALA, the American Lighting Association, to create courses that were based on, the industry standards, opposed to trying to recreate the wheel and do it all themselves. All right, let's change topics for a second so that I don't get yelled at for just doing a lighting show. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today. WiSA was at CES 2025 and leading the charge in wireless audio. First of all, if you don't know what WiSA is, go read through the article. It will explain it a little bit. It's a wireless audio technology, and they've been making a play. We'll put it that way. So go read through the article. It covers some of the new innovations with WiSA or WiSA, and as well as gives a timeline on some of the new products that were announced. Patrick, I want to start with you on this. WiSA they're trying really hard. They're trying to get inroads. They're trying to kind of have a solution out there that is more readily known to the industry and to consumers. Are they positioned properly for any sort of industry acceptance, or is this really going to live as a consumer technology?
Well, I think it's absolutely a consumer. First off the bat, it's absolutely a consumer technology for the foreseeable future. It's also a consumer technology that is, covering a relatively small number of vendors as somebody who has done a podcast about audio and home theater for approximately ever. It's painful for me to see somebody try to roll out a new interoperable wireless technology. I love the idea, like anybody wants to opt in can use our technology, which I love. But at this point, between the 11,000 manufacturers of sound bars and, props to Katie and Sonos, the Sonos surround sound systems, which are pretty much adored, and the fact that LG, Samsung, and every other television manufacturer has their own sound bar and or surround sound system. This is a tough market to break into. They have what I will affectionately call an eclectic gathering of vendors that are working with the technology, and I think this is one of those things. Now, we could argue whether or not anybody ever upgrades their home theater system other than, say, me or people like me, i.e. home theater geeks. I think a lot of people, they install their system and for the most part never touch it until they replace the entire thing. Yeah. But, I look at this and I think, well, okay, if you're okay with the speakers and the technology or the technology partners they have, or vendors, I guess would be a better word for it, great. But it's a hard sell and a hard sell, and it has been interesting for me, if you're working, this is an interesting place for a product to be pitched, right? They've got a couple big names. They've got Bang & Olufsen, they've got Hisense, they've got LG, they've got Klipsch, Optoma. They've got a bunch of European vendors, but I feel like this is one of those things where you're not going to find it in Best Buy. You're not going to see it. You might see it on display in a brick and mortar, residential integration shop or home theater shop, since there are several of those left in the United States. But I feel like they have a hard climb in front of them. Well, I don't want to be rude, right? But it's like, At this point, if I am appropriately dressed, I am in theory the target audience for any home theater or stereo shop that's still standing in the United States. And I have been so disappointed by my experience in walking to many of these shops where, and in one particular case near where I live, I think they're very focused on appointments and building out contracts for massive home builds, and they really don't care about selling speakers or amplifiers or receivers, right? In other cases, you walk in and some 19-year-old's lying to you about the importance of moving to an 8K television, and I just don't have time for it, right? So we're at an interesting place. So I just, is the idea sound good? Absolutely. Is wireless technology entirely in flawless execution? Absolutely. Is there an incredibly small number of vendors doing this? Yeah. And that to me, there's a couple speaker vendors I like. There's a couple speaker vendors on the list that are incredibly erratic in terms of the audio output from their products. Or if I being a more professional and inconsistent voice or lack of a house sound, well, but that feeling where you've heard like 4 speakers from a manufacturer and you're like, wow,
they all sound different. This is wonderful.
Yeah. Outside of the label on the front, there's nothing that's going to kind of bring you back to that. Right. Unless you're just buying the same name, not listening to them and then going, I guess this is what they were supposed to sound like last time. I don't know. This is a little rambly, but I feel like, we're at this point where, home theater is a tough market because so many people are so thrilled with the upgrade they get from going with the atrocious speakers on their television to a sound bar, and they don't want to deal with cabling. Okay, so we have a wireless substitute, but, this is still, there's not a lot of, I don't see any of this being a sort of an affordable alternative to any of a number of much more heavily marketed and available solutions they can pick up from a big box store.
No, that's a good point. Katie, this technology. Again, I'm not picking on the vendors, and honestly, I'm not even picking on the tech. It was pitched as the great solution that wasn't, one or two walled gardens of manufacturers for small, easy home theater solutions. And it's just never seemed to gain enough traction to where an integrator such as myself looks at it and goes, yeah, I have no desire to carry this. This doesn't hit a need I have, or B, a market I really want to play in. And yet I feel that that's kind of what they need. They need it to be something that's integrator friendly so that they can help use that groundswell of people that actually play in this world to get out there and sell and install it. Do they have a marketing problem, or do they have a approach to market issue, a go to market problem?
I mean, so one sort of begets the other there. Yes, I think it's both, honestly. And I mean, no offense to the brand. The space can be murky unless it is very clearly communicated, which is kind of, you could say that murky, and unless it's clearly communicated, is murky. And that's kind of the point. Is I think that there's so much confusion about wireless audio and the benefits. Is it wire free or is it wireless, and what does that actually mean? From a consumer standpoint, I think it still isn't broadly understood or really appreciated. It's acknowledged, but not necessarily broadly understood. From an integrator perspective, this is a technology I just don't hear a lot of chatter about. So, I think that there is, I'm not familiar with their go-to-market strategy. I'm not familiar with exactly what they're trying to accomplish. Clearly, being at CES, there's a huge investment there. So it would appear as though a direct-to-consumer voice and narrative is something that the brand is trying to achieve. I have no idea how long they've been pursuing that. But as I look at the coverage here, what I'm not seeing is what are the differentiators, and what's my experience going to be like when I look on their site. Nobody on the site looks like me. So from a relatability standpoint, the message isn't clear to me what they're trying to accomplish and how that's different. The people that they're trying to represent, while they do look different, it doesn't compel me as a consumer to want to lean in and read more. And even as I was prepping for the call, I found myself just sort of randomly zipping around the website, seeking something that wasn't clearly coming to the forefront. And so I think, Matt, to answer your question, that all of that ties back to marketing, is who is the target audience, and are they receiving a message that is compelling enough for them to act? And when they do act, where does that go? Does it come to the channel, or does it go to big box? And again, unless that's clearly being communicated, particularly with integrators, if it looks like it's going to big box, there's not going to be a heavy emphasis or attraction from the integration community. So I'm a little confused, but I also haven't been following the brand, and I certainly have no relationship with them. So maybe not quite the fully loaded answer that you were looking for.
I was going to say, is when I was what Katie said. When you go to the page, right, and you've got a lot of people with exotically covered sort of I'll just say alternative hair. If somebody's like blue hair color, weird jewelry, exotic jewelry, a speedboat spinning around in circles, and the only pull quote in the website I've found so far is from the president of the company, that's tough, right? You can't get. There's got to be somebody out there who has reviewed this or done this where they can find a paragraph. It's like, I was shocked at how good this wireless system sounds and the ease of integration I had in my home. And they don't, but they've got the president of the company saying, we're awesome. And then right in there, link off the front page, WiSA certified retailers, ABT, Amazon, B&H, Beach Camera, BuyDig, Electronic Express, Focus, Waltz, and Worldwide Stereo. So it's like, oh, you've got Amazon. Great. Awesome. Because I'm going to ask you, you're the host, you're the guy here. Does anything thrill you more than finding out one of your partners in retail integration has an Amazon link?
That's actually how we look for partners in retail integration, is we want to make sure that they're well-rounded and available everywhere, right to your door with Prime for free. That's what I want. All right, we're going to wrap it there. Thank you so much for teeing that one up for me. Hopefully we'll cut that into something entertaining. Patrick, if people want to connect with you, learn more about what you're doing over at CTI, where can they do that?
You can search for Patrick Norton on Blue Sky, or on Twitter is a good place to catch up with what's going on with me.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Katie, if people want to connect with you, learn more about K&B Communications, where can they find that info?
Swing over to LinkedIn, look for K&B Communications, or myself, Katie McGregor-Bennett. Find us.
Excellent. Thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me at Matt D. Scott on Twitter, X, and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show, as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support, and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek,
the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.